Right fellas, welcome back to a brand new video. So in the early 2000s, I thought I was the absolute bee's knees. I was driving around in my Mark III Cavalier JSI, and then that year I went to a Ford RS show at Croft Race Circuit, and I seen some big power Cosworths blasting around the track, blasting up the 0-60 strip. About a year later, I bought my first ever 3-door Cosworth. Ever since then, I have been obsessed with Cosworths. I've spent more money than I care to admit to my girlfriend. I've since bought a Sapphire Cosworth that I've been restoring from Scotland. Then in April this year, I travelled to London and paid £5,000 for a 4-wheel drive Cosworth engine that I didn't really check that well. I didn't do any bore checks, I didn't do any compression checks, I didn't even turn the engine over to see if it would spin. I literally handed over £5,000 of my hard-earned money and headed back home. Since then, we've stripped the engine down, and it turns out I got a bit lucky. It is a good engine, and I've just got the block back from Barum Engineering. Barum have been putting 6 long studs in the block. This is something what people do for high horsepower builds, and that's what we're doing. A high horsepower build. We're going for about 500 brake horsepower. The thing that makes this a bit different is I'm doing it all myself. I have no experience building engines, but I've took this £5,000 engine, sank an extra £2,000 or £3,000 into it so far, and we're going to have a go at rebuilding it. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the block on the engine stand, get it painted up, ready for the assembly, because we're at the part now where we can start to bolt the engine back together. Now, I have been documenting the full breakdown and the price of what it's cost me to build this engine so far. Now, what I will do in this video is I'll show you the invoice from Barum Engineering for how much it cost me for 6 long studs and to skim the top face of the block. But first, let's get the block on the engine stand and we'll start to get ready for paint. Now, this engine block is very heavy. It weighs about the same as an overweight teenager, so I need to be careful not to put me back out. And this here is what we're starting with. This is the original rusty engine block, and we're going to sort it out. We're going to clean it, get rid of all the rust, paint it up, and get it looking mint for when we rebuild this engine. So what we're going to start with on the engine block is like a small knotted wire wheel, and I'm going to put it in a battery powered drill. I'm not going to put it in a proper electric one because I don't want to go too fast at the minute, and I'm going to avoid these machined faces with the wire wheel. I'm only going to go on these cast kind of faces, so I'm not going to touch, I'm going to try not to touch any of these machined faces. I don't want to damage any of this. We're going to strictly stick to the cast face. So let's put this knotted wire wheel in the drill. We've got it set to 2, which is maximum speed, and we'll start on this cast face. And like I said, I'm going to avoid these machined faces with the wire wheel. You might also be wondering why I'm avoiding using a more powerful drill and why I'm sticking with the battery powered drill. The reason for this is cast iron is quite porous, and it's quite a soft material when you go at it, and you can easily take lumps and chunks out of it. I could even see some cuttings coming off when I was using this knotted wire wheel. If I used a more powerful drill, it would have been faster, would have been more powerful. I think I would have done damage to the block, so that's why I'm using a battery powered drill. It's a lot gentler, it will take a little bit longer, but I think at the end we'll get a better result. So we'll give it a loose wire brush. We'll clean some of the gunk off with this cheap Parkside brake cleaner. If you're using this stuff, fellas, always use a well ventilated garage because you'll get high as a kite off it. So brake cleaner is the absolute perfect thing for this job for a couple of reasons. It is cheap, it's easily accessible, and is absolutely brilliant at removing any dirt, grime, oil, any contaminants in the metal. So it's going to be perfect for when we eventually get around to painting it. Right, so when I'm using the drill, you can change the direction with this trigger, which way it spins. And when I'm doing this face here, I can't mark this top machine face. I don't want to damage it with the wire brush. So as the brush spins, I'm having the wires come hit the block and flick off. I'm not having the brush spin that way, so the bristles aren't hitting the face and going down. They're coming this way. So they're hitting the block and flicking off, so it's not damaging any of this face at all. The bristles aren't even touching the face. So you can see here the old rust and paint I need to remove. and you can see me bristles going round. So this wire wheel what I'm using here isn't a knotted wire wheel, this is just a wire wheel. This is 100mm diameter and it is designed to remove rust. While I couldn't get in some of the nooks and crannies where I used the knotted wire wheel, this bigger 100mm wire wheel is perfect for big, large, flat areas, and it removes the rust and the old paint from the block super easy. If you're interested in the knotted wire wheel and the wire wheels I've been using in my drill on this video, I will leave them linked in the description below. But as you can see, this is what we're left with and this is what we started with. I'm sure you'll agree what we've got now is a hell of a lot cleaner than what we started with. So the next job is to mask it up. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to give it all a good clean down with some brake cleaner. Now the benefits of using brake cleaner is it'll remove any dirt, grease, any contaminants in the cast iron. So then when we apply the masking tape, it should stick absolutely spot on. I'm using a combination of 25mm masking tape and 40mm masking tape. So we're just going to mask up all the machine faces and leave all the cast iron faces exposed for the paint. So I'm going to start by masking up the two sides of the engine block, and I found the easiest way to mask up is, instead of fiddling about with sharp knives, is to put too much tape on, then gently file the edges of the tape and peel the corners away. It seems to work absolutely spot on and I've been doing it for a long time. Right fellas, so the most important part of this job is to mask up this top face. We cannot damage this face, it needs to be absolutely perfect for the head gasket that I'm using. So we're going to mask it up and avoid getting any paint anywhere on this face. I'm using 40mm masking tape. So let's quickly rub this file along these edges and sort out the masking tape. If you're interested in doing this job yourself, I will leave a link to the file I'm using. It's nothing special, it's just a basic metal file, but I will leave a link to one in the description of the video. And once we remove this last little bit of masking tape, that is this 35-year-old Cosworth engine block, all cleaned and masked up, ready for paint. And to paint it, what we're going to use is some smooth black hammerite. I'm going to put the paint on with this old paintbrush that I found in my garden shed. Now, as with most things on the internet, when you do your research, there's a lot of varying opinions, and there's a lot of opinions on what to use to paint an engine block. And after doing my research, I felt confident enough in this hammerite to use on my engine block. It is heat resistant up to 150 degrees Celsius. It is also resistant to grease and oil, which is perfect for what we need it for. And in the absolute worst case scenario that this paint flakes off, to be honest, I'll not be that bothered, because the engine will be in a car and it'll be running, and the last of my problems is going to be how the engine block looks. I would rather get out in the car and enjoy it than worry about a bit of paint on the engine block, even though I'm sure this hammerite is going to be absolutely fine. So while that paint dries, let me tell you how much Barum Engineering charged me to machine the block. Now, if you're not following Barum Engineering on YouTube, make sure you check them out. If you're interested in how to rebuild engines and what goes into it, check them out. I'll leave a link to their YouTube channel below. Now, they charged me to pick the block up from, well, they picked it up from my work, so they picked the block up, took it, machined it, and sent it back, right? £842. Now, that might sound expensive, and I'll be honest, when Lee told me how much it would cost, I was a bit bored. But when you break it down, it all makes sense. Just the machining to drill 6 holes, tap for the long studs, just the machining work was £150, right? Then they resurfaced the top, right? Skim the top of the block. That was only £50. Now this is a big chunk, £300 for the 6 long studs. Now the long studs in here, you can buy these yourself, but Lee can get them cheaper than most people, Lee from Barum, so Lee got me the long studs. These are, if I get one out with that. So here is a long stud, what's going to go in the block. It's all machined, it's not like a bit of threaded bar, it's like a nice machined part. It also came with the little gasket, little sealing rings, and I got the old shells back from Lee, from Barum. And what else have we got? We've got the nuts that go on top of the long studs, and we've got some washers. So that was £300. This isn't like Barum don't make these are, no matter where you go, you're going to spend £300 on some, probably more. So the carriage to and from the customer was £107, which I don't think is too bad considering the block is quite expensive and it's all insured, and he picks it up from wherever you are, drops it off wherever you are, just super convenient. That was the best thing for me, the convenience, literally so easy. So that was from Barum, £842. Now I've also been buying more stuff for the engine. I've bought these ARP studs for the con rods. These were about £100. Bought something else as well, 2 seconds. I've also bought new valve stems, cost 8, well it's actually 16. 8 exhaust, 8 inlet, the different sizes. Because if you watched me video where I went to Gordon's engineering shop, you'll see me valves were shot, like these bits, the valve stem guide things were shot. So let's add to the board what I've just spent. So we've got, so Barum was 800. I'm actually left-handed, so this is quite hard to do with my right hand. £842. Then we also bought some long studs for the con rods. They were ARP, £100. Right, now the 16 valve stems weren't too bad. These actually go in your head, and it's what guides your valves in and out the head. So they were £55. 55. Oh, I've also bought a tin of hammerite to do the engine. That was a tenner. So I put it down low. £10. So that totals £7,342 so far on the engine. So as you can see, this is not a cheap exercise. Let's get back to the block and take the masking tape off and see how the paint's looking. So the paint is fully dried on the engine block. It has actually been about 48 hours since I painted it. So we'll take the masking tape off, but to take it off, I'm actually going to use like a blade, because I don't want to kind of peel the paint. I don't know, I just feel like it'll come off easier, and I've got more chance of not damaging anything by using one of these. This is just a windscreen scraper blade. So let's give it a go on the block. Let's start with some of the easier bits. As with everything I use in this video, I will leave links to everything below where you can get your own stuff from Amazon. I'll also leave a link to my PayPal account, and what this is for is you can just make a small donation to the channel so I can make even more stupid financial decisions without putting my house at risk. Now this is the face where we couldn't get any paint on, so let's see how it's turned out. Oh, look at that. That's beautiful masking I've done there. Now I am gently just going to run my Stanley knife blade along the top of the block just to remove the slight raised paint edge. Absolutely perfect. Not one mark on that face, no paint. It just came out spot on. So that is the block painted and looking mint. I'm over the moon with how it came out. I haven't done any damage. It all looks absolutely perfect. But the only trouble is, as I've cleaned it all with brake cleaner, there is literally, this is just bare steel. It's got no oil, nothing to protect it. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to give it a quick coat with some engine oil on a rag just to stop any rust developing, because I would rather the engine work perfectly than be too fussed about how the paint looks. And to be honest, hammerite is actually oil resistant, so it's not going to do any damage to the paint, and it's only going to stop the metal from rusting, which is exactly what I want. And just like that fellas, we have cleaned, de-rusted and painted a 35-year-old engine block. I will leave links to everything I've used in the description of the video, and if you want to see more Cosworth content or even what I'm going to do with the engine, because I haven't even got a car to put it in, don't forget to subscribe, see what I get up to. If you want to check out my Instagram, I'll leave a link to it in the description. You see what I get up to, behind the scenes type stuff. But yet again, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.